T. Hello, silver fans. This is T, and you're in the place to be for silver education, acquisition, and entertainment. Hey, today you are in for a treat. I am going to do two things. Number one, and most importantly, I am going to have my first ever interview with a CEO, the CEO of Callinex Mines. And in addition to that, I'm going to show you lots of this beautiful stuff along the way throughout the video. So stay tuned for some good stuff. Interesting conversation and beautiful precious metals to look at. Hey, without any further ado, let's get started with this interview. Okay, Mr. Porterfield, thank you so much for coming on my channel and joining me. I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first ever CEO interview, so welcome aboard.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here today.
Absolutely. And hey, let's start with who you are. Mr. Max Porterfield has nearly 2 decades of experience in natural resources and capital markets. Callinex has thrived under Mr. Porterfield's leadership and vision for creating sustainable growth in key Canadian mining jurisdictions. Through his efforts, Callinex has attracted top talent and capital, which have collectively led to acquisitions and discovery of significant base and precious metals rich deposits. This is aligned with and contributes to the company's long-term goal of lasting job creation in remote mining communities. Mr. Porterfield is also a graduate of Texas Tech University. So, Mr. Porterfield, that is an impressive bio. But do you feel comfortable sharing a little more about Max Porterfield, the man?
Yes, certainly. I think you said it best. I mean, I'm born and raised in Texas. Have just pretty much my entire career is based upon natural resources in one facet or another. Started with a boutique investment firm out of San Antonio that specializes in natural resource investing. And that really gave me a kind of a keen understanding in terms of A, raising capital, which is critical to any endeavor. And then B, really how do you attract capital from key institutional investors like the company I worked for. And then I immigrated to Canada in 2012 and garnered some experience on the capital markets side. And then ultimately had the opportunity to take over Callinex in 2014. And since that time, I've really been focused on making discoveries within Canadian mining jurisdictions in proximity to infrastructure, where you have obviously the geologic pedigree to host these deposits, and then using the key talent to be able to attract to the company and their skill sets to achieve those objectives, which we're really excited about.
Okay, so growing up in Texas, how did you decide to go into mining?
Well, oftentimes you kind of fall into things in life. I always knew that I wanted to be involved in the capital markets one way or another. I actually, right out of college, it was an opportune time, really the last commodity cycle, where the commodities and the precious metals were hitting all-time highs at that time in the 2006, 2007 time range. And then with that, kind of stuck with it. It's a cyclical business, and when you know what you're in, and you're in for the long haul, you can make a tremendous amount of money for yourself and your family by playing the cycles. And we've really weathered a down cycle in the precious and base metals space over the past decade, and it's setting ourselves up for a really significant move in the metals here, which excited to be a part of.
Texas to Canada, quite the shock to the system, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's commonalities in one regards to another. North America, certainly some differences. Much cooler climate up here,
Oh yeah.
and much more green.
Uh-huh.
So the entrepreneurial spirit, though, with Texans as well as people in British Columbia and Canada, are uniquely aligned to that end. Both Texas is obviously world renowned for West Texas Intermediate, where all oil prices are based off of the WTI number that you read about. And Canada is well known for mineral extraction. So I kind of was born into it. At some point in my career, I do think I'm going to go in the oil and gas sector because I think it's going to be critical in the long term because you need all commodities, maybe less so one over the other, given different transitions that we're undergoing right now. But certainly, it's kind of been born into it.
Does being CEO of Callinex afford you any time for hobbies or any other interests?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that you need to have a balanced life no matter what you're doing. I mean, it's a passion. So, literally every day, Callinex and our objectives are on my mind in one form or another, whether it be kind of vision for the future or just, managing any issues that come up in the day-to-day operations of the business. But with that being said, I do enjoy traveling. I have been able to travel irrespective of the pandemic, and that's just kind of in my blood, as well as art. You can see my background. I do have an affinity for the arts, so that's everybody's got a hobby, and if you don't, you need you get out of balance. And I think balance is very important, no matter who you are or where you're at in your life.
Thanks for sharing that. I've got to tell you a story. My dad is remodeling a kitchen for a friend, and
Hmm.
he needed only about 10 foot of Romex copper wire. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, son, I need some wire." He didn't want to go to the store and spend all that money that he would have to spend on a roll of wire, even though he just needed 10 feet. And that kind of speaks to the inflation and the craziness that's going on, and the copper prices through the roof. We've experienced the most inflation since the 70s and 80s. How does that fall in line with what you're doing with the commodities at Callinex and copper, silver, zinc?
Yeah, so I mean, in an inflationary environment, they're going to be do very, very well. Obviously, a weaker dollar is going to lead to higher commodity prices, given the fact that commodity prices like copper, gold, silver are priced in U.S. dollars. That is also going to be underpinned in terms of supply-demand fundamentals, and really, that's also key to what's going on in the metal space as well. You've got mine supply that's being outstripped by demand, and there's new demand drivers that have been put on to these base metals in particular, based upon government policy. And those policies are their infrastructure spending globally. I know they've been trying to pass an infrastructure bill for a number of years now in the United States. I think that's
Mhm.
going to happen at some point, which is going to be a big demand driver on the base metals, because infrastructure is going to consume base metals, as well as the government policy around electric vehicles taking over the gas powered petroleum powered vehicles, is going to be a big demand on metals, because if you don't have gas, you need to get the power from somewhere. Batteries are going to be a big consumer of metals, and so these government policies are a precursor for change. And when you see that mega trend occurring, it's a great way to take an opportunity to play a part in investing in the space, whether it be in the precious metal space, silver in particular, from an industrial demand perspective, aside from just its use for currencies. So yes, I do like the metal space for multiple reasons, and do think it's obviously critical to the building blocks of the global economy. And with that being said, you just simply had a lack of investment on the supply side over the past decade, and then you add these inflationary pressures on top of that, is what's leading to these all-time highs. And I don't think that's going to be slowed down in the short term here.
I hail from Northwest Indiana, near Gary. I grew up in a place called East Chicago, uh, formerly considered the Rust Belt of the nation. And when the steel mills in this area started slowing down, and some of them even shut down, it was devastating to the area. Now, the company that you are leading, Callinex Mines, has a big opportunity up there in Canada. Please explain that unique story behind that small mining town that is really cheering for you and your success, and why it is a big catalyst for existing shareholders and those who may be listening, rooting for that little town up there.
Yeah, so one thing I failed to mention earlier is that I was actually born in Odessa, Texas, and in that town, the WTI number was why I mentioned that earlier. I was kind of
Mhm.
born into that. My family had been impacted by moves in commodity prices and kind of downturns, oil busts in the 1980s and what have you. So, with that being said, I have a similar affinity for this town called Flin Flon, Manitoba. That's in northern Manitoba, just straight north of Texas, and it's right on the border of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And this is
Mhm.
a town that's been operating mines for 100 years. It's a town of 5,000 people. In the surrounding communities, add another couple of thousand. And the big flagship mine, the 777 mine, that's been in operation since 2004, is actually due to shut down in May of this year. With that being said, if you don't have a pipeline of minerals to feed in to those processing facilities, it's going to have a big impact to the local economy there. And that's going to lead to job losses in excess of 700 jobs. I mean, the mine directly employs 785 direct jobs, and that's going down to just 50 jobs by next year. So what we've done, and it's been a long time coming, it took 7 years in the making to make the discovery of Rainbow. But we hit a very significant discovery that we're delineating right now. It's very high grade copper. Also includes gold, silver, and zinc as byproducts. These deposits in northern Manitoba are polymetallic or multi-metal. And so what our long-term objective has been is to find the next anchor mine, not only for our shielders, but more importantly for that community, because that 100-year production track record's in jeopardy. And it's been our goal collectively to change that. Our technical team's done it before. The team that we've assembled here at Callinex has found 3 of the 4 largest mines in that little town's history. That's 29 mines and counting, I like to say, because we do believe in the potential of the Rainbow discovery. We entered last year with just 3 holes into it, and now we've got over 70 holes into the deposit area as we delineate the resource and look to really drive long-term growth for our company in that community.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll be rooting for that community and success for those mines. Here in the region, most of us know that for every job at the mill lost, it affects a dozen other folks, whether it's hauling the material or sales, you name it. And so hopefully that will be a great success for those folks up there who are really depending on it.
Certainly, and beyond that, I mean, if you look as the world transitions away from the hydrocarbon, looks to replace these metals, these discoveries are becoming harder and harder to find. To kind of give you a context on supply chain for metals, on average in the copper space, it takes 7 years from discovery hole to production. Now, we believe that we can accelerate that in northern Manitoba, given the fact that there's a need for that. Historically, they've been able to fast track discoveries into production to meet critical timelines for the community. You've got a rule of law in a that's very friendly to mining to that end in Manitoba. In addition to that, if you look at terms of mine supply, aside from it being outstripped by demand, you've got declining grades globally, not just in copper, but you're also seeing that in gold and silver as well. So these discoveries are getting harder and harder to find. The grades are getting lower and lower, which means you need to find bigger and bigger deposits. In copper, the average global grade of copper mined around the world today is 0.5%. And what makes the geology and the history of Flin Flon and Manitoba so unique on a global basis is that you've got some of the highest grade base metal deposits in the world that have been produced out of Flin Flon. And to that end, Rainbow and that discovery that we've unlocked there is so far to date, and all the holes that we've announced to the market is in excess of 4% copper. To give you an idea of those grades on a global basis, to be in the top 10 highest grade copper mines in the world, your average grade of copper, and that excludes everything else that we have and we're really pleased to have there, it needs to exceed 3.75% copper or higher. And if you look in terms of those high grade copper mines, they come from geopolitically unstable nations like the DRC or the Congo, more commonly known in Central Africa. And so what's unique about Flin Flon, not only do you have some of the highest grade base metal deposits that have been hosted there, but you also have clean, low-cost hydroelectric power. So as the world shifts away from the hydrocarbon and you're looking to see where is that future supply going to be sourced from, the most environmentally sustainable source for that would obviously be high grades that are being produced by clean, low-cost power sources in stable jurisdictions like Canada, which is why we're so excited about what we're on to here at Callinex and the future of the company and Rainbow as we unlock that through the drill bit.
Well, that's fantastic. You've got that, high grade copper coming out of the ground. Copper is so hot right now. I have a silver stacking channel, but a lot of guys in my space are starting to stack copper. I mean, that's how hot it is right now. Let's talk a little bit about investing in the company. I understand that you yourself are an investor.
So certainly, I mean, it is a very sizable position that I built over the 8 years that I've been at Callinex. And my family has been a big supporter of us, of the company. And so with that being said, it is something that I take very seriously. In terms of management and close associates, hold nearly 25% of the shares outstanding. We also have significant institutional and family offices around the world that have been attracted to the unique discovery that we've made in northern Manitoba and the other assets that we have within the company. So absolutely, I am a big investor in the company. I put my money where my mouth is. And, oftentimes, I think if you look at any big success story in terms of someone that's made a lot of money for themselves or their family, it's because they've invested in themselves. And certainly that's the case here with what we're on to at Callinex and what I'm so passionate about in my life.
Now it sounds like your partners also have a lot of skin in the game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're passionate about what we're on to. We believe what we're on to, and we also want to stand to benefit from our life's work. And I think that that's just not unique to ourselves or mining. If you look at the Walton family in Walmart or the Bezos or Elon Musk, they all had sizable equity stakes in their endeavors and created tremendous wealth for themselves and their shareholders by meeting those objectives and their goals.
You're putting your money where your mouth is. You're working your butt off. When you step back and look back at the 7 years that you mentioned, what's been the proudest moment with the company so far?
Well, I mean, the proudest moment's obviously been hitting Rainbow, and I always had the unique opportunity of actually physically being at the drill when we hit our discovery hole in August of 2020. That was a time when there was a lot of uncertainty in the world, a lot of fear in the world. So to really be able to make that discovery at a time when things didn't look so great was really a tremendous success. But that was really just a start. I mean, it started with one hole. Like I mentioned, you've got to have a lot of drills in a discovery to delineate that and de-risk that asset. But certainly my proudest moment up until now was that first discovery hole. But looking forward, past Rainbow, we want to make another discovery out in Manitoba and create a deep pipeline of minerals that can potentially feed into those processing facilities in that town and extend that town's history for the next generation of miners in Canada to feed that critical supply for the global economy in North America and beyond.
Now, I don't have a ton of mining experience, but my impression is that it is an enormous investment just digging one hole, and so you've got to have a smart team around you. Tell me about that award-winning group of geologists who pinpoint those spots where you're most likely to find the best material.
Yeah, so in terms of our technical team, their expertise, obviously exceeds far beyond just their discoveries in Manitoba, but they have been credited with the discoveries of 3 of the 4 largest mines in that town's history and numerous discoveries outside of that. The skill set expands multiple different backgrounds from geologists, geophysicists, and then, we'll look to get geochemists on board when we look at recoveries and how to appropriately recover the metals from the ground. And that's key. I mean, if you're going to have a vision, you need to surround that vision with a skill set and expertise that can execute to deliver that. I mean, it's not just myself, but the whole team to execute both on the capital markets side, marketing, supply chain. The drillers are obviously doing an excellent job on executing on their skills from a contractor standpoint. But all that's aligned with a common goal, and that's what's important here.
Now, I made a video about Callinex about a month ago or so, and as I was doing my research, I was compelled to become an investor myself. And I want
I
to
appreciate that.
disclaimer to my viewers. But one of the things that was a motivating factor for me, amongst many things, was the fact that Callinex has no debt. Can you tell the audience what position that puts you in to be debt-free?
Well, I mean, certainly. So we've been really blessed, as I mentioned earlier, to have some very supportive shareholders that understand the business that we're operating, which is, on the higher risk of the spectrum, given the fact that we're an exploration company and we're going out there and essentially testing a thesis. So in terms of the capital structure of the company, it's very, very tightly held. As a low float, there's just 13.5 million shares outstanding currently. And in terms of debt and having no debt, I think it's very, very, I'm a risk averse guy. I'm managing risk in a very high risk environment in terms of exploration as a business model. and you don't take on debt when you're not generating cash flow. We create value, much like a biotech stock will create value when they have a vision to solve a cure for a disease or an illness, and then they de-risk that by obviously putting together their thesis and hypothesis on how they're going to create a drug to address that issue. And then as you go through clinical trials, our clinical trials in exploration is the drill bit. You have an exploration thesis that an area is going to host a large deposit, and then you ultimately test that with the drill bit, and they call it the truth machine in the business. And the truth machine is obviously showing really great things as we delineate rainbow. But in terms of managing risk, again, I'm not a believer that you bring debt onto an early stage exploration company that's not driving revenue just yet, because we drive value in a different way, as I mentioned before.
Now, me, myself, I enjoy fishing. I enjoy hiking. My family's big national park family. We enjoy breathing fresh air and, I enjoy fishing and clean water. Can you tell me a little bit about your environmental practices?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're really have been just kind of focused and structured in a unique way that the world's caught up to. When we took over the company, when I took over Callinex, and we've shifted the management team here and realigned it with the long-standing history of the company, which is for base metals in Manitoba, it was really on a focus on that infrastructure. That infrastructure has been around for 100 years, and if they've been mining, it's never been reclaimed. So if you look at a lot of these other mining companies, they can have a deposit, but the deposit is often very, very remote. And with that, you have huge capital costs that go up into this many times billions of dollars to get out to these deposits, and you've got to have all those new environmental liabilities put on a new operation. And what the opportunity here and why we've been focused on these communities is obviously they have the infrastructure, they have the skill set, and we can leverage these discoveries and continue to utilize that without having to create new. So from an environmental standpoint, being in a community that has existing infrastructure, we don't have to create new tailings ponds, we don't have to build new mills is an opportunity, and we can use that skill set there. We really are uniquely aligned to that. What sets Flin Flon, Manitoba, and a lot of these unique jurisdictions apart is the pedigree. And it's the pedigree that's hosted numerous high-grade, world-class deposits, and we're really leveraging off that history and going into these mature camps and using new tools and new ideas and exploring in new ways to make discoveries. Well, as someone who cares about the environment, that is very important to me. So thank you for explaining that. We talked about inflation just a moment ago, and meanwhile, money keeps getting printed. The Fed is doing their thing, and I noticed two things this past week. The stock market went down, and gold and silver went up. Can you speak to this a bit about how that puts Callinex in a great position? Well, I mean, in an inflationary environment, or anytime you have something that's in high demand and low supply, you're going to be in a great position, and you're solving a problem. If you look at any great company, the great company has done something to solve a big problem. And what we're looking to do is be a part of a bigger solution to a big shift that's going on around the world, aside from just money printing. In terms of gold in its performance, silver in its performance in a down market, that's a testament to it being a currency, a safe haven. If you start comparing it to the moves that you're seeing in the cryptocurrencies that were really sold as a safe haven, I think they're more being looked at as a risk-on asset, a high-risk asset, not a safe haven asset. And as that is being more and more realized, that money is going to be flowing away from the cryptos, and I think it's going to go into the base and precious metals, and whether that's going to be in the physical or going to be the equities, like Callinex is, we stand to benefit from all these big moves taking place. So I hope that maybe addresses that question. Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on cryptos. By the way, they took a dump this last week as well. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out throughout the year. What I'm obviously very, very excited about is discoveries. And we are expanding the model that we use on a portion of our land package in Manitoba at Pine Bay, which is the name of our project where we hit Rainbow. we're expanding that on a much bigger scale to make it additional discoveries this year. And that's what I'm really excited about, aside from just rainbow and obviously the backdrop of our assets across the company in the Maritimes and Eastern Canada, is making new discoveries and growing those discoveries in tandem with growing rainbow, which again is that high grade copper deposit that also includes gold, silver, and zinc.
Very good. And Mr. Porterfield, I appreciate you coming on with me. I know you're a very busy man. Before we conclude, is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you think my viewers should know about Callinex?
No, I mean, I think you've done an excellent job asking the right questions, and again, we're a company focused on hitting key discoveries in proximity and infrastructure for these communities on the backdrop of big demand drivers for the base and precious metal space that are going to stand to benefit the company as we meet our objectives. If anybody would like to learn more about the company, they can do so by visiting our website at callinex.ca. That's spelled CALLINEX.ca. And if anybody's inclined to become a shareholder like myself or you, as you mentioned earlier, you can do so. We trade on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker CNX, as well as on the OTCQX in the United States under the ticker CLLXF.
Absolutely. And I hopped on my old school E-Trade, and that's how I jumped on board. And I would definitely encourage my viewers to do their due diligence, and appreciate your time, Mr. Porterfield, and look forward to perhaps doing this again sometime. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks so much for having me, and I would be happy to do it again in the future as we can catch up on how the world's shifted since today.
Absolutely. You have a great rest of your weekend.
Likewise.
Take care.